I then learned that it is possible to visit deceased people in the afterlife in this out-of-body state. That was the point where I said, now I can't go back. Now I just have to go on because that's where I want to go. I don't just want to experience these afterlife contacts. That's fine and good and healing, but I want more. I want to see Luna doing well. It is my right as a mother. This is perhaps also selfish, to see where my child is and to ask her myself, are you well?
Mrs. Scheller, you lost your not yet 3-year-old daughter in March 2020 in inexplicable circumstances, as you described to me beforehand. After this tragic event, you repeatedly experienced after-death contacts and related phenomena. But before we get to that, please tell us how you experienced the death of your daughter Luna. What happened at that time?
Ja, also das passierte mitten während der Corona-Pandemie in Österreich. Das war sehr unvorhergesehen, sehr plötzlich und überraschend.
It happened unexpectedly, very suddenly and surprising during the corona pandemic. My daughter Luna was 2 years and 9 months old. We had gone on an excursion, cooked together, and also gone to bed normally. 3 weeks earlier, my youngest son had been born. The space in the bed was very limited, so I went to sleep in the living room. It was a family situation. Shortly at 11 o'clock, my husband came running downstairs, screaming in panic. "She's not breathing! She's not breathing!" I only saw her hanging down, lifeless arms. And I was full of panic at that moment. I only heard her gasp, meaning breathe out air, but I didn't feel like she was breathing in air. I immediately called the rescue, which was with us within half an hour. I did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and chest compressions. All this happened automatically. I did what I remembered from the first aid course, and I trusted the rescue people. They really tried everything, and for me, there was no question that someone from us would accompany Luna to the hospital. I had the thought, we'll get this fixed, until the paramedic turned around and said, "I think she's going to die." I'll never forget that moment. It's still with me to this day. She died a short time later that night in the living room at our house. My second oldest son was home that night.
She was not then transported by the rescue services?
The helicopter had already been called and landed nearby, but she was not stable enough to be transported to the hospital. She died at our home, and that was a totally horrible situation. We had to wake up my second oldest son, and he got to say goodbye to her. Barely half an hour passed, and then the police and people came to take Luna away in the thin coffin because she had to have an autopsy. None of us knew what had happened. She had no symptoms of illness. She had been fine. She had been squeaky clean.
The death of your own child is an extreme experience. How did your husband deal with it? How did things continue after that?
It didn't go any further. This is such an existential event. It threatens the whole life, the whole existence of a mother and a father. Only people who have experienced this themselves can understand it. Somehow everything stops. Nothing makes sense anymore. The whole world order is out of joint because it simply can't be that one's own child dies and one lives on. We were very isolated, also because of the corona measures, for which I was also very grateful. I wouldn't have known what to say. The next day I had to call my parents and tell them, "Your granddaughter died." They were shocked. Then we had to wait for the results of the autopsy. The farewell had to be prepared. Only a limited number of people were allowed to be there. Clothes had to be chosen. We talked to many doctors on the phone to find out what happened, what was going on, why did she have to die. The support from the village community was very big. Especially the children brought many pictures, gifts, food. There was cooking for us. We were called. But with time, the support became less. For me, it was shameful, because after a certain time, this "I only functioning" stopped. Then at some point it was clear Luna is really gone and she's never coming back. And then really comes this deep sadness. Our partnership suffered a lot. I think that many couples separate in such a situation because everyone grieves differently. My children also mourned very differently. It was often barely visible and hardly noticeable. They were crying, but somehow they were grieving very differently than I was. I really cried. I locked myself up. I didn't want to go out on the street. I thought, I can't go on like this. How can we go on when our own child is no longer here?
Did you find out later what the autopsy findings were, what the cause of death was?
Yes, the official result was known a few days later. The doctor said it might have been pneumonia. I felt guilty. How could it be pneumonia? Was I missing something? She had no cough, no fever, nothing. The last time she had been sick was months ago. That was really terrible news. It wasn't until 6 months later. You have to imagine how awful that is, waiting months for the autopsy results and finding out what the child died of. That it turned out that she was actually healthy. The doctors can't really explain why she died. All that was found was heart muscle inflammation.
Then how did the after-death contacts come about? How did they begin? What did you experience?
Actually, already at the moment of her death. Both grandparents independently woke up at the moment of her death and felt that something was wrong. My father had severe chest pain. He didn't know at all what had happened and why he felt that way. He didn't tell me until afterwards. My mother-in-law also told me that she woke up and felt that someone was there. That was the beginning of the after-death contacts. It was a huge wave that went off. I like to think back on it because it was so incredible that you couldn't explain it rationally. My mother had a very intense dream a week later, which still occupies and accompanies her today, in which Luna said goodbye to her. I slept a lot after her death. Grief really makes you very tired. Shortly before falling asleep or shortly after waking up, I saw my daughter in front of my inner eye. That seemed strange to me. I said to myself, that's a grief reaction for sure. I am grieving for her and that's why I see her everywhere now. She was waving at me and smiling at me, and that was really cruel, because I was thinking now she is gone, and I miss her so much, and now I have to see her all the time, even when I want to sleep. These impressions then somehow took on a life of their own. I saw Luna more and more often, always before falling asleep, shortly after waking up. And they were also always surreal scenes that had a connection to where I was during the day or what had happened. I couldn't explain it to myself. At the same time, the whole technical hodgepodge in our house took on a life of its own. The TV went on and off. The intercom suddenly developed a life of its own. the kitchen stove in our car, everything electronic suddenly stopped working. It was quite strange. My husband was the first one to say, "That must be Luna. She's contacting us now." I thought, well, that's very comforting now. Of course, people always say that she's always with you and that she has not left you. And that is nice and easy to say, but somehow these doubts were there and the sadness was very great. But these signs became stronger and stronger until I thought, maybe there is something to it. And if she is really somehow there, where is she? And how can I get in touch with her? That was my lifeline when I was so sad. Who knows? Maybe there is something after death after all. And if so, what is it? How can I find out?
Can you recount anything else about your mother's dream?
Yes, it was a very nice dream. She dreamed that my children were spending the night with her. Then she went to the front house. Suddenly she looked out the window and thought, "What's going on out there? It's so strange out there." Everything was so colorful and beautiful. She saw beautiful birds flying around. And somehow they were also full of joy. She thought, "Wow, this is an incredible view." Then she looked to her left. There was Luna. And Luna appeared bright white. She was wrapped in a white dress with a white cap. My mother was crying, and Luna pointed at her and said, "Grandma, I just have to go first." Then they hugged, and my mother knew she is going to a beautiful place now, where there is no suffering and no pain.
You had visual perceptions, so to speak. You saw them internally, right?
Yes, in the beginning I saw them inside. That was the beginning of everything. I studied psychology. I come from another subject and thought to myself, this is now simply a post-traumatic stress disorder, a depression, whatever will develop there now. And with one of us, something like this will surely develop. We then booked an appointment with a psychic. I thought I would ask this lady what she thought was going on with my perceptions, because these became more and more intense.
So, you also wanted to hear this side?
Right. I just wanted to get an overview. I always want to make up my own mind. I want to listen to everything, look at everything, and then decide what I think about. Amazingly, this woman knew exactly what it was all about. She told me so much about my daughter that she couldn't really know, and that was quite fascinating. I then asked her about my perceptions, and she said, "Write it all down, Annika, and eventually you will find out if there's anything to it." I did that, and then I started meditating, because I thought to myself, funny, apparently, whenever I'm relaxed, before I go to bed and after I wake up, in a state of deep relaxation, I get images and information. Or at night, an incredible amount happened during the night. I heard her voice calling out to me, which was really also a sign of grief for me in the beginning. Then I really also tried to get answers, to ask questions, to look, what can I do with this?
Which ones, for example?
For example, whether she was behind all these electronic phenomena. That was an event that was totally crazy. I really thought, now I'm going crazy, because something like this has never happened to me before. I was awake at night, having an inner dialogue with her, asking her, "Are you behind these signs? Is there something behind it?" I saw, and I don't actually tell many people this because it was so extraordinary, in the room, a kind of ethereal materialization of an object, an electric cable that floated directly towards me. I thought, wow, either this is really the answer I wanted to get, or I'm going completely crazy now. I really considered getting help because I thought, if I start seeing things and hearing voices now, that's a red flag for me that something is absolutely wrong. That's when my husband said, "You're not imagining it, just trust it. That will be Luna, who is simply still there and wants to tell you, don't be sad, I'm still here."
Where did he get this confidence?
I don't know, but I think he was already very fascinated by these external signs, by these after-death contacts. He also had a very intense after-death contact. Her grave is in our garden because my husband wanted to have her very close to us. He sat down at Luna's grave in the evening, talked to her, and then really had a massive impression that someone was standing behind him. He was firmly convinced that I was behind him. He looked around and turned around and realized, no, there's no one there. Later he came to me and asked, "Were you in the garden? Did you visit me?" It was really clear to him there was someone there, and he didn't imagine it. When my sensible husband says something like that, I believe him completely.
Which of you two had the idea to go to the medium?
When I proposed my idea to him, I was very skeptical about how he would react. I went to him in the kitchen and said, "I have to tell you something." He immediately said, "You must have an appointment with a medium." I don't know how he knew that. We never talked about it.
How did you come across the medium? Was this woman recommended to you?
I researched on the internet and thought to myself, there are certainly many charlatans, and I have never had contact with this world. I just followed my gut feeling and, of course, the reviews. I wanted to find someone who seemed trustworthy. That really worked out great. We had an appointment a few months later. I am very, very grateful to the woman. I am still in contact with her today. We exchange ideas on a regular basis. I am firmly convinced that it was meant to be and had to come.
Was there any particular statement that alleviated your skepticism, where you said, "Now I'm convinced"?
Basically, she was able to describe relatively well what Luna died of. By then, we knew that she must have had an inflammation of the heart muscle. She knew immediately that something was wrong with the heart, that there was an inflammation. She could describe exactly that she died at home at night. My book, Im Himmel gibt es Erdbeeren, There Are Strawberries in Heaven, in which I wrote about my daughter's death, had not yet been published at that time, so from the book she could not know that. She told me about my grandma, what our relationship was like, and what kind of person Luna was, what she loved so much, and that her urn is at our house, which is already something special in our village. Those were really clear signs to me that there must be something to it. She could not have made these things up or researched them. Only the closest family circle knew that at the time. That was very specific information.
How did the contacts with your daughter develop then?
My conclusion was, when I am really deeply physically relaxed, these phenomena, these contacts obviously increase. So I started meditating, because that's also a way to relax really well. Since I was totally busy during the day with the other children, with the household, and also with the morning, I started to meditate at night, because then I enjoyed the silence and the stillness. I noticed that with time, a kind of communication flow really developed. It was possible for me to ask questions and get answers that I often didn't understand right away. Sometimes I got answers to questions that I had asked days later. That was very interesting. But it was really like a quest or a kind of puzzle, a whole world of its own, another language to learn.
Could you give an example?
I have to think for a moment now. In the beginning, she mainly showed me that she was with us. For example, she showed me scenes of my parents. My parents were harvesting in the garden today. I think it was peas, so very simple things. Or my mother was baking a cake today, which also doesn't happen that often. I would always make sure and ask, "Were you in the garden today?" Or "What did you do today? Is that true? Or am I imagining it?" In most cases, it was true, even with the other children, especially concerning my son Julian. Luna conveyed a lot to me when she had been with him, what he had been doing. I had that confirmed to me. Is that really what happened? Were these events then also really real? I tried to develop my own system to find out. What is it?
The contacts with Luna became more and more important for you. How did that affect your life?
Of course, the contacts have become totally important. I thought, wow, Luna is still there. I have no idea how she is there, in what way, but she must still be there. I also had no idea where exactly she is now, whether it's a heaven or an afterlife or whatever. My thirst for knowledge was totally stimulated. I wanted to know more. I had 100,000 questions. I thought, hey, cool, she's still here. We can still keep in touch. I don't have to say goodbye. That was really the worst part. I didn't want to say goodbye. I wanted to keep this relationship going. And if there's a possibility to keep in touch, I wanted to maintain and develop that contact. But I have to say that I neglected my normal life a lot because this issue became so important. I realized that everyday life no longer had any appeal for me. I also didn't see any meaning in life anymore, apart from being there for my other children. But I was still so deep in grief and needed to know, is she really there? Because doubts remained. Despite all this evidence and reassurance, I said to myself, what if it is just imagination after all? Wishful thinking. Because I am such a little skeptic. If I had known she was there, it wouldn't have been enough for me either, because I thought, I want to hug her. I want to talk to her. I want to see where she is. Please, I want to see that she's okay. I don't want to just get images, single signals or impulses. I want to know how she's doing now, what's next. And I just kind of want to see her again, skin and hair.
Then, one night, you had a very special experience, right?
Yes, I have been meditating at night as usual. I am a very restless sleeper and have several interruptions of sleep, mostly also because of the children. And I woke up. I woke up because suddenly there were loud noises and very strong vibrations. Such a vibration around me, or maybe even inside me. I didn't know exactly what it was. I had never experienced anything like that before. I just knew it's almost a little bit scary. These vibrations were getting stronger and stronger, and these sounds were so intense, as if they were next to my ears, as if a jet was flying by every second. Many inner images surfaced, but I couldn't focus on them because I was so frightened. I looked at my husband, who continued to sleep peacefully. I thought, that's funny, because I noticed that and he doesn't. And then it was all over. I thought, funny, I can't place it, but somehow it must make sense why this happened to me. And then I couldn't go back to sleep. I thought, what are they trying to tell me? Who is the sender? What was that even about? It was something I couldn't place at all. I then started researching the next day, because I always think, who knows, maybe there is someone to whom something similar has happened. And I very quickly came across this vibrational state that many people talk about just before they leave their physical body. I thought, vibrational state? What is that? What's happening there? Where does it go? What happens after that? Then I came across the subject of out-of-body experiences, which amused me at first because I thought to myself, out-of-body experiences? I don't really know. That's such an esoteric area. People who say they travel to the afterlife and come back, that sounded way too adventurous to me. But I was still very open-minded and thought to myself, as always, I'll do some research and try to understand this again. Take another look at it and then just form an opinion. That's exactly what I did and tried to read everything about it. I came across a huge field of interest where many people are studying this subject and many are also using techniques to achieve this out-of-body state. I then learned that it is possible to visit deceased people in the afterlife in this out-of-body state. That was the point where I said, now I can't go back. Now I just have to go on because that's where I want to go. I don't just want to experience these afterlife contacts. That's fine and good and healing, but I want more. I want to see Luna doing well. It is my right as a mother. This is perhaps also selfish, to see where my child is and to ask her myself, are you well?
How did you fare along the way then?
It was very bumpy. I read a lot about it. There are 100,000 techniques and a huge smorgasbord of method books. I didn't know anything about that, but it became clear to me that you have to make sure that the physical body goes to sleep and the consciousness stays awake, and you keep it awake to get into an intermediate state, into another state of consciousness. I remember as a child having many intense dreams in which I was flying. It was completely real to me as a child. I flew over houses as a child, for example, over my school. That was normal for me. At that time, I remembered that and thought, who knows if there's something to it? I then meditated regularly, also at night, with this interruption of sleep in order to follow that up again and to look. What were the conditions at that time? What was decisive that I got into this vibrational state? That was a good way to move forward because I was able to bring about this vibrational state more and more often. But that was only the beginning of many unsuccessful attempts. Nevertheless, I kept at it and tried everything to get further. And so I did. And one day, I was successful.
And in what way?
It was Christmas, the first Christmas Eve without Luna. And that was another one of those days that catapulted me back a little bit. I have been practicing every night, sleep interruption and meditation, and these techniques to get out of this physical body. I came closer to getting out of this body a couple of times. At least I felt like I did. That day, of course, my motivation to see her was enormous. I really wanted to see her. It was Christmas. It would have fit so well. I practiced again in the evening and failed once again. There are many exit techniques you can use. I tried them all and nothing worked. I failed again, was so frustrated and wanted to lay down again. Suddenly, I heard two men's voices talking very close to me. And I thought, funny, who is that? Who is talking? They were talking about my experiments and my methods, and that what I was doing wasn't so bad. Then the voices went silent. I wanted to turn aside and thought about it. Suddenly, a figure was standing next to me, in the bedroom next to my bed. I clearly identified this person as my spirit guide, because I must say that this is how I always imagined him, as a young, dark-haired man. It was completely clear to me at that moment that it was him. It wasn't disconcerting at all because I was awake. He waved at me and wanted me to come with him. I said, no, that's not possible now, because my son Philip is sleeping next to me. He was only 6 months old. I can't leave now. He kept pushing until I agreed. I'll come with you. I haven't forgotten that night to this day because it was so extraordinary. We then flew. It was indescribable. I couldn't put it into words now what it was like to fly. I had no idea where we were flying to. We flew over water, over very colorful areas. I can't describe it. Something I have never seen before. We landed on some kind of beach and he told me to keep walking. I kept walking and I knew something was waiting for me there. Something or someone. I came to a gathering of people. I was in a park of some sort. It was very idyllic and beautiful. The sun was shining. These people were talking, but I didn't know any of them. I came to a children's playground, looked around, and saw some children. Then I came to a play tower, stopped, and knew there is something now. I looked down, and there was this little children's hiding place. Then I saw those brown eyes and those blonde curls. My daughter calling out, "Mommy!" I cried so much. I couldn't hold back my tears, and I took her in my arms. We really met in a way I never thought possible. I was still with her in that place for quite a while, able to look around and inspect everything. Then the moment came to say goodbye, and a woman I didn't know came up to me. She said, "It's time to go." I said to her, "No, that's out of question for me. I have to see her again. I don't want to leave. I need to see Luna again. That's not enough." She said, "No, it's out of the question." But I am a very stubborn person. For me, it was clear, no, that's out of the question. I just have to see her again. You can't be serious. I can't just see her once. I want to know more. Then they agreed that I could come more often. I said goodbye to her and ended up back in my bed, fully awake. I couldn't sleep anymore. I had to wake up my husband and tell him about it, because it was an experience that still doesn't let me go.
What convinced you that this was more than just, as they say, a nice dream? Did it have a special reality value? When you talk about a dream, one would have to assume it was a nice experience, but a few days later, it's forgotten.
I know what you mean. Many people ask me the same thing. That was a beautiful dream. But I say it was not a dream because I was awake, I was fully conscious. In a dream, it can also be that you experience the dream with some consciousness. But this is different. You wake up differently and you go into the dream differently. A dream has many time jumps and illogical events. An out-of-body experience is very different from a dream. I was able to have this experience whilst being awake. There was no period of time before or after that I was asleep. From that, I was quite sure that this was absolutely real. An experience that is anything but a dream. Nevertheless, I wanted to know more and also to make sure what was it and how much certainty was behind it. Because I'm a bit skeptical and said to myself, that happened now, all well and good, but what was it really now? And how do I manage to experience something like that again?
Did you manage to do that several times?
Yes, until today. This is a subject that occupies me day and night, out-of-body experiences. I think this is my way. It had to develop that way. I am occupied with it day and night. I now manage to go into the afterlife every night if I want to. I have worked hard to achieve this. Because very few people know that you can not only have a one-time near-death experience that occurs suddenly during an operation or during a traumatic event, but that you can consciously leave your body and go to specific people and places.
With all that you have experienced out of body, You, as a skeptic, have you tried to verify these experiences? Is there even a possibility to verify them?
Above all, I have to say that you have to prove it to yourself. There are people who say, Annika, why don't you pick me up tonight and show me the afterlife and prove it to me? Then I always say, that's all well and good, but you can really only prove it to yourself. Only your own experience counts. I have read a lot before, also about out-of-body experiences, how that is possible and what people experience. That was beautiful and healing and also very comforting, but it wasn't enough. That's how it is for many mourners. They say, this belief in the afterlife gives a lot of hope and comfort, but believing does not mean knowing. I want to know. I don't just want to believe, because only if I know that there is a life after death, and if I can imagine what it looks like there and what you can do there, then I can go on living and focus on this life. I have had many experiences that, in retrospect, turned out to be true. For example, I later became the mother of a daughter. This daughter was already introduced to me at that meeting with Luna. At that time, I could not place it. I knew that there was a girl by her side that Christmas Eve, but who it was exactly, I didn't know. I was still curious, because basically the topic was not so present that we would become parents again. Especially not when you have lost a child. You are always afraid that another child will die. But then I had a lot of out-of-body experiences and met entities that told me, Annika, you're going to get pregnant with a girl next year in August. I thought, no, that can't be, because that's really not our subject. We're in the middle of mourning. But then it actually happened that way. I doubted for a very long time what this actually is and whether these are real experiences. Many people report about the spiritual world or the hereafter. And I was often confronted with staying in faith and accepting my experiences. Today I know that there is definitely a life after death, that it is beautiful, and that no one who has lost someone needs to grieve, but should simply know that life afterwards is beautiful, and that it actually only begins afterwards, that there is only a change from one level of being to another.
Looking back, can you make any sense of your daughter's death?
Absolutely. I know that it is very difficult for many parents to accept that the death of a child has meaning. From a human point of view, the death of a child never makes sense. I really want to emphasize that. But from a spiritual point of view, there are many things that develop after that. And for me, it was like that. I am actually grateful to my daughter for taking this step, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here today, carrying this knowledge with me and being allowed to have these experiences. I had a nice, normal life before, a life that was also very unspiritual. I had nothing to do with all this, and was also somehow happy. But today I know that everything had to come this way. Of course, I also had the decision and the choice, which way do I go? Many parents break up after such an event and say, I don't want to live and be happy now either. Why should I? But I decided to take a different path. This path has led me to my daughter, to many other places, and to a lot of knowledge that I can now pass on.
You've written something about that too. How did it come about?
I have written several books. Now I have written my 4th book, and I think I can write many more. My first book is called There Are Strawberries in Heaven. Actually, I never wanted to write a book about the subject. I basically like to write, but I didn't want to write such a book about the death of my child. At some point, this thought came to me, and I also very quickly had this title in my head, Im Himmel gibt es Erdbeeren. there are strawberries in heaven. At first I thought, I'll just write for myself and start writing down my after-death contacts and what it's like to lose a child. I noticed that this is a big topic, especially for the surrounding or for the relatives, and they often don't know how to deal with the affected. How could they? After all, they still have their children and don't know how it feels. In the beginning, I didn't want to publish the manuscript at all. I wrote and wrote, and within a few months, the book was finished. And then I thought, actually, it has become a really beautiful story. Because although it touches very honestly, relentlessly honestly, on all facets of grief, I also help other parents to gain hope that death is not the end. I found a publisher relatively quickly, and the book was published very quickly too.
Do you think that mediumistic contacts, or even your way of travelling the afterlife via out-of-body experiences, could also be a way of coping with grief for many other people?
Definitely, but I think you have to distinguish because it's not for everyone. Especially my husband, who to this day says he doesn't want to go to the afterlife or visit his daughter. I'm not angry with him because he says he wants her here. He is still very angry that his daughter was taken from him, and I don't blame him either. I don't think it's his place in this life to dwell on it either. Still, I think that proving that it goes on after that, especially for grieving parents, can make a massive difference in grief. Because readers who know my first book in particular know that it's very tough stuff in places. Today I sit there and say, I am no longer grieving for my daughter. I am free of sadness. On the contrary, I am very happy for her. I rejoice in this life. I am happy that I can be here and look forward to everything I can still experience. This is a process that probably would not have happened if I had not had these contacts and these out-of-body experiences. This can be a way for people to come to terms with their grief or deal with it better and get back into life, a happy life even. When I first started looking into out-of-body experiences, I read a book by William Buhlman. This is a man who, during his lifetime, was very much involved with this phenomenon of out-of-body experiences. He writes in this book that he has helped grieving parents in particular to see their child again through out-of-body experiences. I thought at the time, wow, why doesn't this exist in our country? This is a way to experience firsthand that things go on after death. That's incredible. In the meantime, I have started a project myself where I accompany people, especially grieving parents, to see their children once again, to enjoy an out-of-body experience at least once, which is not easy. It requires a lot of work from me and also from my counterpart. But if everything goes well and we work well together, you can experience in your own body that you are more than this physical body and that you can enter into this otherworldly plane and visit the deceased. This is a way of coping with grief that has not been done before, at least not in our country, and yet it can change so much.
Then I wish you all the best for this concept, for this path. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much.